go. Hey, Drive Tribe members. I am super excited about this call. I've been looking forward to it all week. And I want to introduce Tash to you. Tash is an online business coach for creative business owners who want to see their passions make profit. She helps emerging entrepreneurs build impact-based businesses that give back and make money. And I know that that's a subject that interests a lot of you that are on this call for sure. And yes, she said, yes, these two things can exist in perfect harmony. She has over 15 years of coaching and development experience, a degree in psychology, and has built multiple impact-based companies over her days on this planet. She currently owns and operates a local handmade jewelry company called Peppermint and Pine. And she's the co-founder of the Chillionaire Club, which is totally cool. I think you guys have no idea. The Chillionaire Club, it's an online community designed to teach female entrepreneurs how to run chill businesses that make loads of money. So she, like, you're in the right place at the right time for this call. And Tosh, take it away. Thanks for saying yes. Thanks for saying yes and agreeing to come and share a lot of the stuff that we talked about when we talked in a conversation earlier with our Drive Tribe members.
Well, thank you for having me. Just make sure there's no feedback here. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be a part of this community. And today we're going to talk about, you call them programs, I call them blocks, but we're going to talk about abundance blocks and yeah, just some neural repatterning, some things that kind of happen in our brain and they just limit our ability to make money. And it's one of my most favorite topics of all time. So I literally could talk about this for days. My goal is to try and stay within an hour. So that's the target here. But I'm super excited. So thank you ladies for having me. I'm just going to kind of quickly see, we got a group, sweet. I can't see everyone's face at the same time. That's okay. I'm going to pull up my screen because we're actually going to go through a PowerPoint presentation. And hopefully this will come up here. If I can navigate this, whoops, I want to present. Okay. Can you guys all see my screen okay? Just kind of give me a nod, sweet. Now I gotta find where I can stick you guys so I can still see it. Awesome. So welcome to Money Mindset Masteries. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk all about blocks and breaking them down, what some of the common ones are, and how we can navigate them. So my goal is to kind of go through this and give you some tools throughout the end. And then there'll be an opportunity at the end to do a Q&A if you guys have any questions. And I believe Jill is managing the chat. So if there is some questions in there, by all means, tuck them in the chat. And then Jill just shout out if something is, if there's a question that comes up, and we'll just kind of organically go through it from here. Thank you, Dawn, for that beautiful rendition of who I am, an introduction, that's the word I was looking for. So yeah, I am a business strategist and money mindset coach. I have been running my own businesses since I was about 21, was my very first business. I owned a painting company, or I started a painting company. It was a massive disaster because I was 21 and knew nothing about painting. But alas, here I am 20 years later, still, driving this entrepreneurial train. I also, is not on here, but I worked at a university for 15 years in development. It was a lot of my coaching experience comes from that. And in 2017 is when I started Peppermint and Pine, which is my natural stone jewelry business. So I'm a maker, I'm Canadian. And so I own a local handmade jewelry business here in the city of Calgary. Yeah, and then from there, I started helping folks start their own businesses, talking about money mindset, co-founded the Chillionaire Club with a couple of friends who are both American and Canadian. And we teach people how to start and scale businesses in the chillest way possible, which is where a lot of this stuff comes from. I am not interested in working all of the time, although it can look that way because I run 3 businesses, but I don't work all the time. And it's really important to me important to me to make sure that we're set up that way. So I love teaching other people that. I also recently launched something called the Local Lab, and it's a Facebook group for local business owners who are just starting out. And it's just a great place for me to share a lot of the tips and tricks that I learned early days in my my product-based business. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I like to start this presentation out with just a fun fact. I call it a fun fact, that we all have blocks. Everybody has blocks. So I teach about abundance mindset. I teach about how to identify your blocks and how to release your blocks. But we all have them, myself included. I have tons. And in fact, every time I think I break down a block and I get over something, a new one just like shines its beautiful face. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know you existed there. And really that's what this is all about. And we're going to talk a little bit about your subconscious mind and where these programs and blocks actually come from, and why we don't even see them all the time. Sometimes we're very aware that they're there, but in lots of cases we're not. They live in our subconscious brain and we're just completely unaware of that. What we're going to actually go through today is 4 elements. We're going to talk about 7 common blocks that I see in many of the women that I coach, and people that are just in my life. I have conversations. I love to talk about limiting beliefs and blocks. So these are 7 common ones that I see again and again and again. So we're going to go through those. My guess is that some of these will really ring true for you, or they might hit you right in the heart. Then we're going to talk about 3 ways that they show up. So you might be reading this list and be like, oh, is that me? And then as we get into the 3 ways that they show up, you might be like, ah, interesting. I didn't make that correlation. Or, that is like, for example, I do have, let's say, back pain, for example. These things can show up in our bodies as one area that they might show up. Then we're going to talk about 6 different ways to release them. I mean, it's going to be pretty high level, but I will go through one in detail so we can actually go through one together. And some of them you will actually already know and be able to do without my help. And then last, I'm going to talk about 5 traits of an abundant entrepreneur. And again, this is just what I believe, that if we can focus on these things, they take us into a very different entrepreneurial space, and allow the flow of abundance directly to us. I'm hoping everybody has a piece of paper and a pen. Throughout the presentation, there'll be some journaling questions. I'm going to leave a little bit of time for you guys to write, and they'll just be right on the screen. There'll be a question that will come up for you to kind of do some self-reflection. Any questions so far? I'm guessing no. Looking good. Okay. So the first step is to identify what your money blocks are. So we're going to go there first. As I mentioned, some of these money blocks that we have, we don't know that they're there because they're in our subconscious brain. I also wanted to say that the reason for that is a lot of our money blocks or our limiting beliefs are actually developed between the ages of 0 and 7. So long before we even remember that these patternings are into our brains based on experiences that we had at a time when we couldn't even control what was coming in. Your brain from the ages of 0 to 7 is basically just like an open book, and information goes on and just lays in there. You don't have the ability, your brain isn't developed enough to say, I don't agree with that, or I don't believe that. And so these things just land on our brain based on how we were raised and the environments that we were in. We can develop money blocks or limiting beliefs as we get older as well, but primarily the reasons we're not aware of them or where they came from is because we were quite young when they first started. So a money block, is essentially your brain's limiting way of not allowing yourself to actually experience the flow of abundance. I'm going to get a little woo because I have a tendency to go a little woo. So hopefully you all stay with me here. But essentially, when we have these limiting beliefs, these things in our brain that stop us from behaving a particular way, we literally put the blocks right on for money coming. We are leaving money on the table, as Dawn says. Smart women don't leave money on the table. But if we allow our blocks to control us, then we do leave money on the table, and we don't allow that money to come to us. So that's essentially, very simply, what a block is. It's something that's in our way from accepting or getting more money. Where do they come from? So sorry, I guess I got ahead of myself here. So I talked a little bit about, yeah, they come, basically, they're primarily developed between the ages of 1 and 7. They can come a little bit later based on our experiences, but definitely those subconscious ones happen well before we're even aware that they exist. Okay, so some of the good stuff. These are 7 common stories you might be telling yourself. You may not identify with all of these, but you might identify with all of them, and you might really strongly identify with a couple of them. And I want to go through them one by one so that you can kind of see maybe how this looks for you. So the first one, and I would say one of the most common ones that I hear from the people I coach and work with, is that I'm not worthy. I don't deserve this amount of money. Now, we don't say those things like that. We don't go out in the world and be like, I don't deserve any money. That's not actually the words that we say, which is why it's sort of hidden in our subconscious mind and sort of, made up in this worthiness. So we don't feel worthy for something. We might as well be saying those words. We might as well be saying, I don't deserve X amount of money because I don't feel worthy, or I'm not enough. Worthiness can sneak in lots of different ways, and then it can manifest as a money block. So let's say there's one that's really closely tied to this. It's the I'm still new at this. I don't know enough yet to be paid for this. So that's number 3. I see these two very closely connected. And I would say this was a strong money block for me that I feel very grateful to have overcome. But for folks who feel like they need to get more and more and more education before they feel comfortable teaching or giving or doing something, or whether just being in the action of it, that may be a block, right? This feeling of, I don't know enough, I'm not enough to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And I would say early days in my coaching career, for sure, you're thinking, I can't teach this person this thing. I only know a little bit, or I have this little bit of experience. And that's when you can initially identify that block. Someone who doesn't have that block is like, well, I'll just tell them what I know, right? So I don't know if you guys have heard of Denise Duffield Thomas, but she wrote a book called Chillpreneur. It's amazing if you're looking for a great read. And in there, she makes a quote. She says some quote that's like, the second I gave myself permission to be a contributor and not the expert, I was able to actually make a massive difference in my business. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, like, this is a block that I have. And as soon as I gave myself permission just to contribute, then all of a sudden my business changed. So this is a perfect example. I'm talking about money blocks. I've come a long way since the very first time I delivered this position, or this webinar. I'm like, what is the word? But since then, I've done more and more research on blocks. I've done more and more research on how to help people clear blocks. I've learned a lot more about energy and how it manifests in the body. But if I had let that, not knowing that, get in my way, I never would have even started. So feelings of enoughness. And this might show up in other areas of your life. If you're a mom or you're a parent, like, I feel this one a lot in that space. Like, am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Am I there enough? Anything that feeling of enough leads you to believe that you need to do more and more and more, and takes you down this rabbit hole and away from just the receiving, right? The accepting that you are perfect the way you are. You're exactly where you need to be, that open space. So that's the first one. The second one is, I feel comfortable, guilty, or embarrassed. So this is another one that is really, really common. And this shows up oftentimes when people are leveling up. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience where all of a sudden you're taking your life to the next level and you're like, okay, I'm ready for this next level. And then all of a sudden you're like embarrassed to go online. You're like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me? That feeling of embarrassment going on. Does this feel authentic? I'll tell you right now that at the start of any massive shift and change, it doesn't feel authentic for anyone. Like, when we're creating our future selves, it is an awkward, uncomfortable place to be. But we get scared. When we get in there, we're like, oh, this doesn't feel normal. This doesn't feel natural. And then we retreat. That is a block. There is a block there, rather than just leaning in that this is who I'm becoming. This is who I am now. Another way this looks is this feeling of guilt. So feeling guilty for making money or for not making money. For example, sometimes I find hard to actually come into into these and give examples from my personal life because I feel like I've busted through so many of them. But there was a time when I would feel guilty for wanting to work on my business in evening hours, for example. I have two kids, they come home, and I'm like, oh, if I'm working on my business, then, I'm not giving them the time and attention that they maybe need, or that I'm making the assumption that they need. And so then it just creates this friction, right? It creates this, either you're frustrated with the kids because you're not able to do what you want to do, or you're frustrated with yourself because you didn't get something done in the day. And then it just creates this friction instead of this openness, right? This decision, this control decision of it. So it may show up as a block there if you're feeling guilt around when you're working, or how much money you make. This is actually now this is one way that showed up in my life. So I grew up in a family that didn't have very much money. So this is a story, and this may be a story for many of you. My parents didn't make very much money. My mom definitely didn't make very much money. My biological dad left when I was really, really young. And my mom used to say to me, Tash, whatever you do, you better be able to handle it yourself. You better be able to take care of the babies. You better be able to make your own money. You're going to go to university. And she'd tell me these things. And so at a very young age, between 0 and 7, I knew my job. You better be able to handle it yourself. As I grew up, and that was, that story didn't serve me all the time, but it did serve me in some situations. I grew up and I created a life very different than the one that I grew up with. And all of a sudden, I started to feel guilty about the fact that I had money that my family didn't. My mom's a house cleaner, or she's not a house cleaner, sorry, she's a cleaner, but she works in a care facility. And it took me years to hire a housekeeper. And I think part of it was a block. And then when I told my mom, because I felt so much guilt around the fact that this is what my mom does for a living, and now I'm hiring someone else to do this, you can see the friction here, right? You can see where that block would be. It took me so long to tell her. I want to say it was like a year before I actually said, oh, Mom, I actually have a house cleaner. And my mom cried. She was like, this is all I ever wanted for you. And I'm like, to release that, right? To release that block of like, it's okay. She wanted this for me too. I have it. And this is my reality now. I can release that guilt. But I carried it for a very long time. The third one here, I'm still new at this. And I think this block comes up for me and a lot of my clients because I work with relatively new entrepreneurs, 0 to 5 years, early stages of their career, or their experience in entrepreneurship. And so this is, as I mentioned before, that I don't know enough yet to deserve to be paid. That comparative space, right? Where it's like, oh my gosh, that person is doing this, and I'm not as good as them. So what right do I have to charge X, Y, and Z? This is a very common block that I deal with folks. And I have a whole course on pricing strategy for people, whether you're, pricing your own personal self, or you're pricing products, because this block really gets in the way of people's ability to make money. If you have this concept of I'm still new at this, therefore I can't charge, you're leaving money on the table, right? Because it's not, I'll get into this because I can get on a whole soapbox about pricing, but our price points and what we charge actually have nothing to do with who we are and our self-worth and our value. If I've learned anything in 20 years, it's that price point, whatever it is you're charging for, has everything to do with the client you're working with and where they're comfortable at. And if you put yourself in the position of a buyer or a client, you know how much you're ready and able and willing to spend on something, right? And then those people come into your space. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you might have an experience where you think, well, I have $2,000 to spend on this. And you come up to someone you think is going to be so amazing and great, and they're only charging $500. And you think, oh, well, maybe they're not that good. And so then you choose somebody else because, that person has a really low price point, even though this person maybe has the same, if not more skills than the person's at 2000. The price point has nothing to do with that person, has everything to do with the person who's buying. So as we remember that, when you think about who you're selling to, who your niche market is a way to kind of bust through that block a little bit, right? So we have to get there. We need to make sure that we're getting paid. We deserve the money that we set. And of course, there's certain calculations to put in there, make sure you are actually profitable in a business. That's important. But at the end of the day, the number means more, it speaks more to the person buying than it does about you yourself. The fourth common
Tash,
story that yeah.
I really think this is interesting. And I know we're all women on this call, and the Drive Tribe, they're women.
Yes.
I look at the first three and I think those are so typical of women, that we devalue ourselves. We try and be nice and we want people to like us. So we don't want to charge more or ask for more. I think it is a very, very female attitude. And number two, I see that a lot with women who make more money or don't take jobs to make more money than their male partner. And I just think there's so many social norms that we fall into. They're not healthy norms, but that I just see those 1, 2, 3 as being so female oriented. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts about that, if you see that as well, or if I'm just reading, if that's my personal story.
Yeah. So no, I mean, I work primarily with women, which is why these ones show up. I think you're absolutely correct. These top 3 ones are very common to women. Now, my theory on this, and again, I might get a little woo for people, but I feel like, and this actually isn't that woo, is science, right? We actually model and know our ancestors, right? So if you look at when blocks are created between 0 and 7, who's teaching us those things? Our parents. And as women, we're learning from the women in our lives, the people who look like us and act like us. And so we develop these things and we look at our family structures and we look at what's around happening in the universe, and then we develop belief systems based on that experience, right? Whatever that experience is. And the reality is, over time, these have been the norms. Women have made less, is why we have to fight these and think, why is that? Why do women make less? Where does this come from? Why isn't this changing? How do we be a part of this shift and change, right? And so, I think that there's some patterning that is wired into who we are as women. And then once we recognize them in ourselves, only when we recognize them in ourselves do we have the power to change it. Because otherwise we're working on autopilot. And that's what this is all about, right? We're all working on autopilot. And I used to teach a course in university called Being a Leader. And the whole course was on the ontological, the being experience of leadership. And I mean, all the principles in that apply here, right? We have this thought of what something needs to be, when in reality, we get to create that. But we can't create it until we erase and clear all of our assumptions and stories that we have about these things. And that's why this work is so important to me, because I feel like once you bring it and put a flashlight on it or a magnifying glass on it and say, wait, where does this exist in my life? And how can I start to break it down? How can I change the language? And we'll get into the ways that you can do that near the end of this presentation. But the reality is they exist. And then I think too, the other interesting thing, although I'm learning a little bit more about shifting things from the root, but sometimes we'll deal with a block, right? I might deal with I'm still new at this, I can't charge enough. But I can tell you, as someone who's been doing this for a long time, I've been a course creator for a while, every time I go to do something new, it comes up again, where I'm just like, oh, I don't know. And I teach people like pricing strategy and money blocks for a living. And it will come up for me where I'm like, what do I charge? I don't know if I can charge that. And so it's just really funny that they repeat themselves. Over time, I do think the grip loosens. And some you can get away really, you can like let go of really quickly once you've actually pinpointed it. Does that kind of answer your question? I think I just kind of agree with you, but I do think that a lot of our patterns are just a direct result of the environments that we are in and the things that we choose to believe. And there are times in our lives when we actually have chosen different ways of believing, and then that has changed and shifted our experience of our reality, right? And this is all the basis of that. What you experience in life are basically a subset of your belief systems. So if you, for example, this is going to be a big stretch potentially, but if you believe that it's easy to make money and you fundamentally believe that, it will be easy for you to make money. Now, that's a really big, bold statement, because then there's all of these blocks that come up shining through, like, not me. Oh, wait a minute. That's not my story, or that's not true. That's crazy. But the reality is, if you believe it, that becomes your experience. That's science, right? We can call this the law of attraction. We can call this all kinds of different things, but your brain is actually created this way. It's created to develop these belief systems and then show that's what it sees. That's what it sees in your actual living experience. I could go on a whole tangent all day long with the brain. I love the brain. Number 4 is I never have enough. Money comes and money goes, but it never stays. So this is a story, again, that just might be that you've been living, or that you've lived your whole life. When you were a child, that might have been the experience of your parents. Like maybe they had a little bit of money, but never seemed to stay, or like it seemed to be enough, but never enough to get ahead, to keep money in our bank accounts. And again, if that's what you were used to and that felt safe and secure, that will be the life and the reality that you're recreating now. So taking a look and seeing, is that what life looks like for me? If I look at my own, outside of my business, my own personal bank account situation, there was a time when I had a budget. And in my budget, I'd have all these pots, and I'd be like, this much money for groceries, and this much money for this, and this much money for that. And at the end of the month, I'd be paying my bills, and I'd go to my credit card. And every month it was $2,000 more. And it was almost always the same number. And I would think, why is my bank account always $2,000 more, or my credit card? This doesn't make any sense to me. And so finally I was like complaining about it one day, and someone's like, well, do you track your expenses? And again, this seems like such normal, logical thing. I'm like, well, yeah, like I go in and I have a budget and I move pots and I I shift, but I wasn't actually looking at those things. The second I actually started a budget where I reconciled my accounts, that never happened again. And in fact, I started to make money, because all of a sudden the way you see something changes. You make different decisions. If you're in the habit, for example, every Sunday buying groceries, but you don't actually need groceries on Sunday, but you go buy groceries anyway, and then you throw away a bunch of food. Well, that's probably because you didn't look at your budget. So it's just, there are these things these patterns that we get into, and they can feed right into this story. I never have enough. Money comes and money goes, but it never stays. So this is a story that we've told ourselves. The next one is, people like me less if I have more money. People with money are bad. I never thought I had this block. I never thought it was, I thought, no, I don't have this block. But the way it actually shows up for me, and I don't know if this will resonate for people, is that I don't know any rich people. So I used to tell myself that story. You know how they say, hey, you're a collection of the 5 people you hang around with, or, make sure you aren't the smartest person in the room, or what's another one, like basically those kinds of sayings. And I hear these sayings and I think, I don't know, I have all kinds of mentors that are rich people. I realize that I can shift my story there now, but at the start, I was like, I don't know any rich people. Like, I'm the first one that went to, post-secondary education in my family. Like, even my siblings don't have money. Like, that just isn't my reality. And then I realized that all the rich people I knew, I watched on television. And so this is going to tell you exactly how old I am, but I was like, actually probably a little old to watch this show, but I used to love the show Gossip Girl. And I think about, there's these rich girls living in New York City, and they're all bad. They're good. Sometimes they're good, but then sometimes they're bad. And so and then I started to think, every show, like made up show that I would watch growing up, 90210, like all of these shows, the people that had money always made some kind of dumb decision, or they were in jail and they get out of jail. And so in my brain, whether I was aware of it or not, people with money are bad. They make bad choices. They're bad people. And then that's deep in our core. And then it changes, it creates a block to becoming rich. We actually put things in the way to stop that. So we have to think, okay, well, who are the people in the world that have money that are good? And we got to look for because there's thousands and there's probably millions of them. There's so many people who have a lot of money who are really good people, but we choose to focus on these imaginary stories we watched on television. More money, more problems. If I have more money, I'll have to deal with X, Y, Z. A big one for this is I'll have to pay more taxes. If I bring in more money, I gotta pay more taxes, or now I'm gonna be in a different tax bracket. You know, people don't, or they think if I make too much money, who's gonna manage my money? I don't know how to manage my money. Someone else, I don't know how to find someone. And so like unconsciously, we block ourselves from bringing in more money because we don't know what to do once we've hit 6 figures. Once we've hit 7 figures, we're like, oh my gosh, what does that even, I don't know that kind of money. What does that even look like? We don't know it, so we just stop it. And we think if I have more money, more problems. Or, you know, I'm going to have to pay for my family to do X, Y, Z. Cousins from, you know, this family are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to need money and I'm going to have to pay for that. And so we stop ourselves from actually making more money so that we don't have to worry about the problems that might come with that. And some of these stories, you know, I'll tell you a story of a friend who had this block, and she traced it back to when she was a child. I can't remember if it was her parents or her sibling, like her brother, but someone used to take her money. They would like take it from her. So she'd get money in her little piggy bank and they would steal the money from her. They would take it and use it for something else. And so she started to get a bad relationship with money because, you know, people would just take it from her. And so she had this, like, if I get money, I'm just going to have problems. Someone's going to come and take it from me. And so she had these issues that kind of came out of this experience she had when she was like 5 years old. So these stories that we tell ourselves actually start really randomly in like sometimes a one-time experience and then manifest themselves throughout life. And what happens is then we see another example of it, like as grown-ups or maybe as teenagers, we're like, oh, I got money and then, you know, my best friend made me buy them lunch. Or like I got a job and my parents made me start paying for rent, or whatever the things are. And this wires itself all the way back to this one time when we were 5 years old and someone took something from us. More money, more problems. And so that's how the story grows over time and reinforces itself as we age. And then the last one of these blocks, and there's lots of others, but we're going to talk about today is making money is hard work. And this is huge. This one I think exists for men and women. And I actually, in my experience, I wonder sometimes if it's stronger for men, but you have to work hard to make money. I have this debate with my husband literally all the time because I no longer believe this. I believed it for a very long time. We're told as children from the second we ask for anything, you better get a job, or you got to work hard for that. What are you going to do to earn that? And it might be anything from when I was a kid, it was like, be able to handle it yourself. You're going to go to university. To go to university, you're going to have to work damn hard in school to be able to get accepted and even get in there. And then if you want scholarships, then you're going to need to work even harder than that because that's the only way that exists. And then when you get into university, you're going to work hard, you're going to get a degree, and then that's going to get you the job. And when you're in the job, you're going to work hard so that you can get promoted. And this is like the story that we follow our whole lives. And then one day we wake up at a kitchen table like me, and my kid asks some kind of question about money. And my husband says, well, you got to work hard. And I'm like, well, you got to work smart. I don't know if hard is the right word. And he was just beside himself. You can't teach our kids that. They must learn how to work hard. And so anyway, we have a little bit of friction in our house. He still believes you must work very hard. But the reality is we have the same amount of hours as the people in the world making billions of dollars. So you can't tell me that that person works more hours or less hours. And they bring in so much money. Do you have to work sometimes? Yeah. Do you have to learn things? Absolutely. But if we believe that how hard we work equals how much money we get, there is a ceiling, whether you work for yourself or not. Because either you're going to crash and burn and then not make any money anyway, you know, or you're never going to reach, you're going to constantly be working and chasing, you're not going to live your life. And so I think that making money is hard is a story a lot of us have been told our whole lives, and we have to find a way to rewrite that story. So those are my 7 common stories. Are there any ones that you guys that aren't on this list or that resonate with you, or you want to share your experience? If there's another one that you've heard before, I'd be interested.
Can I share?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a gal that I was coaching, and I said, what are you afraid of? Like, what are you afraid of? She said, I'm afraid of success. I said, okay, well, so what does that mean to you? What does it look like? She said, I'm afraid of success because I have two brothers and they're not successful. And I don't want to show them up. So I don't want to be like I want to be, have money and pay my bills and whatever, but I don't want to be brilliantly successful because I think they'll feel bad. Like she actually said that and I was like, holy moly.
Yep.
I mean, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. There's no such thing as being, it was really, and I thought that's really interesting. And then I had another experience with another gal who was making a ton of money. She was making a ton of money in network marketing. Like it was just rolling in. And she walked away. And I think it's because she was raised with a very strong work ethic. And she was raised that you have to work hard for your money. And she wasn't working hard. And she was making a ton of money. And it did not fit with her money program. And so she literally like tapped out. And now she works like 16 hours a day. And she always talks about how busy she is and how hard she works. And I'm like, but you had the easy and you walked away. And she made up some stories about it, whatever, like you do to justify or whatever. But, and then just one more, and then I'll shut up, is one I've heard that I didn't hear you mention is that there are people that have a program that they can't make more money than their dad made. Have you ever heard that?
I have not heard that one yet, but this is fascinating to me.
As soon as they hit that number, whatever it is, the number they know that what their dad made, they don't pass it. They stop, they cannot, it's not okay to make more money than my dad made. I've heard that a few times. So, run that one down and let me know what you find out. But
Interesting.
I can understand that would be a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and this leads into the I feel uncomfortable. So those are the stories, right? A few of all of them in a way is I'm uncomfortable making more than my dad. That's a nice way of saying that. But the reality is there's guilt or there's shame or there's some things wrapped up in the feelings of that. And, the making money is hard work, that story, if it's not hard work and it's coming in, something's not aligned. Something doesn't line up here. That's like, this doesn't feel right. This feels like I'm stealing it. This feels like it's, it's not, I didn't earn it. I don't deserve this, right? There's also some worth kind of stuff in there. And the same with the brothers, that's the uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable that, and again, if we were raised or we've known for years, the men in my family make more money than the women. The woman's job is to do A, B, C, or D, all of a sudden to break that mold is possible. And there are a damn lot of us on this planet working so hard to do it. But it's hard. Because we're not programmed. We haven't seen that. That's scary. That's the fight or flight in our brain, that the brain says, this isn't safe. You don't know this world. Don't do this. The safety net is to do this way. Is to do it this way. So, those stories, like, yeah, it's fascinating. The ones that can come out. Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any comments or anything to add? I didn't want to steal the show, but I also am completely fascinated by this topic. And I've done Harv Eker's The Millionaire Mindset. Did you ever do that one with it? And he calls them money programs. I think he's 17 money programs, and talks all about this and how you exactly develop money programs at a young age when you don't even know they've developed. You don't know how that happened, but there they are, and they're running your life. This thing that happened when you were 2 years old that you don't remember is running your life, right?
Totally. Yep. It's so true. And sometimes they're really, I've gone back and done some hypnosis work to kind of go deep into that, to be like, where did this come from? And where are some of these root causes? Because I think sometimes the way to really eliminate them is to get to the root. And once you've got to the root, like anything, then it's a lot easier to dissipate it. Yeah. And some of those memories, I was 2-3 years old and they were like so confusing, right? I could see myself in the situation. I knew exactly what was happening. I felt the shame. I felt the guilt, and I didn't know why it was bad, or I didn't know why, one for me that, when I was doing this work around worthiness, I was a child and I had asked my mom about why our kitchen looked the way that it did. Because at the time, our kitchen sink was on 2x4s. We didn't have flooring. Like, it was just like a plywood on the floor, and it was just a disaster in there. It was an add-on at some point, and my parents didn't have any money to fix this. And so it was just this room, but everybody else, like my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, all had proper kitchens with like a table and a sink and counters and stuff like that. And so I remember asking in this like vision or in this meditation that I was in, I had asked, why does it look like this? And I don't know, maybe mom was having a bad day and she just didn't know. And she probably said something that made me feel guilty or shameful for even asking that, like, we had this. Another story that has come up for me, and I don't know if this one will ring true. It was another in this same hypnosis. My mom used to drive a Jeep, and in the Jeep, she had a hole in the floor. There was a hole in the passenger side in the floor. You could see the road when you look down. And I was probably 5 or so. And I said, Mom, this isn't safe. We probably shouldn't drive this car. And my mom said, Tash, we have a car. We're good. But this car goes. Like, in her mind, she's like, we have enough. And so that's a story that I have had my life. I broke at that time, was like, but it's good enough. This is enough. We don't need any more, because this is enough. We have each other. We have love. We have a car that goes. Who cares if there's a hole in the floor? And so, when I'm like sitting in my kitchen, I'm like, why do I have like a cupboard door that's not on? Well, I learned at a very young age that that's not what matters. We have a kitchen. Who cares if the cupboard door opens or closes? But that's not who I was creating myself to be in my future life. I want a kitchen that all has cupboards, So we have to go back deep and figure out at what point did we become okay with these things? Did we accept these stories and then start living them? And then as we solve different things throughout our lives, they get stronger and stronger and stronger. Once we can get to that root, then we can start to actually break down what we're learning and where we're operating from. Okay, so this is our first journal prompt. And the question is, what story do I need to change in my life in order to make more money? So what is the story that maybe you saw in that list, or that you felt, or you could pinpoint, be like, here's a story. And you can just pick one. You might have more than one, but just take a little moment to think about, what is the story? And the reality is, like, you will have dealt with some, but you still may have some that come up from time to time.
Can you refresh back to the list so we can?
Yes.
And Tosh, we had a couple of women join in progress. And is it that right now we're taking a break to sort of journal and write on that, or just write it down for us to think over and journal?
Yeah, just write it down. You don't have to write a whole lot on there. I just want you to think about what yours is, that you have it. One of the strategies we're going to talk about later is journaling. And so if you have this, that's the starting point, right? Is knowing what it is. So one statement's good. Oops, sorry, I can leave that back. I'm going to just give you another minute, and then we're going to keep going. Okay.
So, Tosh, one of my takeaways already is, what am I saying to my daughter? I mean, I think we all nodded about things that maybe we were raised with, or thoughts, and, and just, yeah. Working hard is definitely one of them, Tosh.
Yeah. Just shift it to working smart. They still got to work. But, it's funny, like, so my son's 9, And he hates writing. He hates writing things. He gets hard on himself because he can't spell, and he's 9 and it's hard and he's not fast. And so it used to bother me because whenever he had work to do, he would voice to text, and so the text, like the computer would write for him. And I was like, how are you ever going to learn how to spell anything if you just voice to text things? And then as time went on, he's like, well, I'm allowed to do this at school. And I thought, well, that's weird. Like, why would you be allowed to do that at school? And then I thought, when will you have to handwrite anything as you get older? Like, really? Why is this the thing that I get hung up on? Like, is it easier for you? Are you getting the job done? Good. Great. Like, my husband is 30 some odd years old and he can't write. I can barely, if he tries to make me a list, I can read 3 words on it. I can't read a thing. So like, what am I trying to like, instill in him? So, you still got to work. You got to learn the lessons for sure. You got to go through and do it, but you don't have to spend 16 hours a day, working the grindstone. You can work smart. Okay. So the next one is, how do money blocks show up in our lives? So I just want to briefly talk about this because I think sometimes this can be an indication of where they exist and how we're carrying them. So 3 ways you might notice blocks. The first one is physical. So this might be in your bodies. And I also added, or lack of actual money. So the physicalness of not even having it might be an indication, right, that there's something there. So if some people think, well, I don't know that I have any money blocks. Well, do you have money? Sweet. Great. If nothing's good, then you probably don't need this presentation. Are you feeling it in your body? So for me, it used to show up. So I would say when I have, I don't know how many people here know about your chakras, but your root chakra is at the base of your spine, and it is connected to safety and security. And whenever I feel like my digestive system is out or my low back is bugging me, that is like a sign for me where I'm like, am I worrying about money? And almost every time I'm like, weird, I am, for whatever reason. So sometimes it can be physical in our bodies where we carry stress. Maybe you carry stress in your back, right? If there are some issues around that space and you're not feeling good about it, chances are there's a block. The biggest one really is mental. So that I see, at least for the folks that I'm working with, because I'm coaching people, we are often dealing with their brains, but an inability to raise prices, make sales, take action. This is all a very strong sign that there's some kind of block going on there. Because if there's not a block, it's easy. It just flows out. It's just like, or even when you don't know how to do something, you just try and you just do it and you're not worried about it, right? There's no block there. You're like, well, I'm just going to try and do this thing. But then sometimes, and this used to happen for me. I love to write content. So I could write content all day long, but then I would never sell it. Because I'm like, I don't know how to sell it. Block. And I'm like, well, what is that block about? Of course, you can figure out anything. You know, free stuff there is on the internet. Literally, you can learn all the things, but we don't allow ourselves because we think, oh, like, the stories come back in. Oh, I don't have time for that. Or, I'm not far enough along, or who's going to buy this? And that's, once you start hearing yourself tell the stories that come out, that's an indication that there's some kind of block. And where is that block? And then, knowing what you know now, chances are that block was created when you were a child between 1 and 7, and it's manifested throughout your life, and it's been strengthened by other stories that you've told yourself, that you've seen other people tell yourself. So this is just a sign. Whenever you feel stuck and then there's not a willingness to push through it, or you find yourself procrastinating on it or whatever, it's a great place to look. What am I blocked with here? And definitely if it is the money-making side of the house. I see this with so many people. Like, I'll have people who build a whole business, build the whole, like, opt-ins, course, all the things, spending the money for the platform, and they haven't even set up a bank account. And then they're like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, what? You can't even receive the money, right? So like, there's a block there. There's this need, like this inability to receive. And then the third one is emotional. So feelings of anger, frustration, resentment, that those feelings and emotions that we have, especially when we see other people who are successful. So how does that come up? What does that show for you? Where does, if, for example, this used to happen for me a lot. So I talked a little bit about Denise Duffield Thomas, who wrote The Chillpreneur, and she has a course called Money Bootcamp. And she basically lives my dream life. And she has like one course. It's all she talks about her course. She teaches people about money, how to make money, to about blocks, you know, whatever. And there, at the start of when I started doing this, I had to stop following her because I would get so sad and emotional, being like, I can't do this. She's doing this. Until finally I was able to get to the root of that block and be like, Denise doesn't care about me. Like, you know how many people teach about block clearing? Literally everybody. Like, once you've learned it, you can't help but share that information with someone else. I guarantee you, after this, if you've gotten anything out of this workshop, you're going to go to someone in your circle and you're going to be like, you're never going to guess what I learned. You can't not share it because it changes you. So it's just really funny that we can watch these people who are so far ahead of us and let it get in our way, right? That's the, you know, this emotionalness that stops us, again, blocks from that abundance to come directly to us if we're worried about the people who are, you know, 10 steps ahead of us. They had to start somewhere too. The next journal prompt question is, where are my money blocks most prominently experienced? So for you, is it physical? Is it mental? Or is it emotional? So when you saw those three things, what was the first one that came up that was like, oh, yep, that's me? And I will say that this shifts and changes, right? Like sometimes it will feel physical, we'll push through that block and that physical feeling or pain or whatever doesn't exist. And then it might show up, you know, a different time with, you know, from a mental perspective, an inability to raise prices or to, you know, actually ask someone for a sale or an offer or whatever. So just take a quick moment to write that down. Okay, so this part 3, ways to clear your block. So this is the bread and butter here. So there's 6 powerful methods to release your blocks. We're going to go through each of them relatively quickly, and then I'm going to get to Socratic questioning. That's the one I'm going to work with you on. The first one is mantras. The second one is tapping. The third one is journaling. Then we have chakra clearing, forgiveness or ho'oponopono. And then the 6th one is Socratic questioning. So you may know some of these words, you may not know some of these words, and that's okay. I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview. Some of them you'll just be able to do on your own. Other ones, if you're curious about them, you might have to do a little bit more research. So mantras. Mantras are ways or like statements that we read that we can use to repattern our brain. So you can Google money mantras. At the end of this, I'm going to tell you about my Abundance Unleashed program that I have coming up. In my program, one of the bonuses is a downloadable sheet that has 20 money mantras on it. And they're just statements that we say out loud to ourselves. When you're first starting out, I will say using mantras feels very weird. There used to be a time. So one of the mantras that I love is, I am a money magnet. But when I first started saying that, I would say it and I would just giggle at myself, being like, Tash, who do you think you are? Like, you are so weird. And then eventually, like, I love mantras. I use them all the time. The second if I catch myself thinking a negative thought or questioning my abilities, I can actually repeat mantras. I can catch myself and I can change the story. I can change it almost instantly. And that is really why mantras are really powerful. And once you have a list of them, I used to just have them on my phone, like in my notes on my phone. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd read my 10 mantras. And right before I went to bed, I'd read my 10 mantras, and that was it. And it was like a little bit, funny. Eventually I actually recorded myself. We're not going to talk too much about this here, but right before you go to bed, you shift into almost like a hypnotic state. It's a great time to listen to mantras. You don't even actually have to hear it, just goes directly in your brain or be consciously aware. So I actually recorded myself reading them, and then I would just play the 1 minute statement, and I would just play it right before I went to bed. So that's mantras. If anyone has any questions at any time, just pop them in the chat or just speak out, and I can go from there. The next one is tapping. So tapping, you may have heard of tapping. So tapping is the like where you tap on your eyebrows and you tap on your side and you tap on your cheeks and you tap on your chin, you tap on your chest. So this is just a way of actually releasing certain emotions about things. And I would say if you're going to do this, so there's people who are NLP certified. You can actually just watch, like Google a YouTube video on tapping, and it uses language to actually, to reprogram your subconscious. So it's like sometimes, you know how in some cases people say, oh, just be positive about something. And then, that'll shift your energy and your vibe and that'll shift everything. Well, sometimes we just can't, right? Like sometimes life is hard and sometimes we are worried. And I believe that we need to actually acknowledge how we're actually feeling about something in order to release it. If we just try to push it aside, that's when I think we can manifest things into our physical bodies, or it can come in a different way because we are just pushing it, pretending it's not there. But if we own it and say, you know what, I'm actually worried. I'm worried about this, and I want to not be worried about this. Using something like tapping will actually help you release the emotion of it. So it's just a method that uses language and hitting certain points on your face and on your chest that will release the emotion, the intense emotion that you have around something. And like I said, you can Google a video on tapping and just follow them. The next one is journaling. You guys all have access to this. So we've gone through a few questions. You've actually journaled on, what is the story I'm telling myself? Where is this showing up my body? We're going to get to, a coming question that's like, what is the new story that I'm going to write, right? Like now what? So if this is what I used to believe and I don't want to believe that anymore, what are you going to believe in instead? And it's really important to replace our old patterning with new patterning, because our brain wants to connect to something and it's just going to grab onto what it knows until you start to give it something new. And that's why mantras are powerful, because eventually you hear the mantra so much that your brain is just like, oh, we know that. Oh yeah, that's real. Yep, that shows up. That's just how you do that, is through repetition. Chakra clearing. So chakra clearing is a really powerful and interesting experience. I don't know if anyone's ever done this before. In my Abundance Unleashed, I'm going to be doing a live clearing activity, and then I have a meditation in there that is also clear. So basically it's bringing in a light energy that kind of goes right through your body into the core of the earth and back up through. And it's great for blocks that you don't see, that you don't know exist, that are in there. And in the clearing exercise, we look at some of the common stories and blocks that we have, and we clear them right from when you're a child. It can get you to a certain state where you can actually remember a year, you can remember a moment, and then we can clear that from the roots. So that's what chakra clearing does. Ho'oponopono. I love Ho'oponopono. So this is a 4-statement thing that you can only do on yourself. You cannot do this on someone else. This is something that you only can do for yourself. And it's 4 statements. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. So whenever we're feeling like, this comes really in hand, I think, for worthiness, right? These stories that we have come up to, or that we've come to know, we learned them at a time in our life where we were not in control. We had no option but to to take in whatever the world told us at that time. You were a child and your brain was young and new, and that's how it learns things. And so forgiving that person to be like, you didn't know, you get to choose now. I still love you. I love you. And I'm sorry that was your experience. Please forgive me for having continued on this story for years. And thank you. And as we do that, we actually clear ourselves, and it allows us to be open to other people. One other way I use this is, and this is not a block, but this is just more of a tip. If there's someone who rubs you the wrong way, and you're like, you just don't like that person, there's nope, this is just not jiving with me, or there's something there, and you feel judgmental about them for whatever reason, a great thing to do is actually to clear yourself, forgive yourself. It allows you to actually open up and accept that person differently. And it sounds really weird, but I have people in my life that I can't not have in my life. One, my best friend's husband, that I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that person. Every time I'm around, he makes me tense, and he says things that I don't agree with. But I can clear myself and then just be like, nah, that's just Nate. That's this is who he is. And it doesn't affect me anymore because I've allowed myself to clear that, to be like, no, you know what? I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And then move on. It's also a great practice if you are a coach. I love to use this before I go and coach, because then I clear all my own stuff away and it lets me be fully present with the people I'm working with. And then Socratic questioning. So Socratic questioning is to get to the deep whys. And this is what I want to do with you guys right now. I'm over time, so this always happens to me because I get so excited talking about things. But I really do want to go through this at least a little bit. So the first question, so the question is, why do I believe I'm not making the amount of money I desire yet? So I want you to think about that. And I mean, if you are making the amount of money, then great, you can skip this part. But if you have a number in your mind and you're not making that amount of money yet, why is that? Why do you think that is? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And just kind of write that down. My question, as you wrote that down, is, do you believe that? Do you believe whatever answer you gave? So, I'm not making the amount of money, because I haven't been doing this long enough yet. Do you believe that? And the answer might be yes. The first time we go through this is, yeah, I believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have said, this is how I feel. There's some party that believes that. Okay. And so then the next question is why? Why do you believe that? What part of you believes that and why? And just, and be gentle with yourself, talk to yourself as if you're a child. Why do you believe that thing about yourself? That's the reason you can't make that kind of money. And then as you come up to what that is, if you're like, well, this is the reason. This is the reason. And if you feel conviction in your reason, go back to this question. Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that? And then once you have the answer to that, you can go back one more time. Okay, if the answer is, yes, I really do believe that because of this, then why? Why do you believe that? Eventually, as you go back and forth with your questioning yourself, sometimes doing this as a partner is really handy. But if you go back and forth, eventually it's going to feel silly. You're going to get to a point where you're like, okay, well, I don't really believe that. I don't really think I can never make that amount of money. I don't really think that that's the truth. Then you get to move to the last question, which is, what would you prefer to believe instead? So if you're not going to believe these stories you're telling yourself anymore, what would you prefer to believe instead? And then create it. Create what you would prefer to believe. I would prefer to believe that making money is easy, that it just flows to me easily. It comes in all many which ways. I used to believe that I had to work for money. So this is one of my stories. The only way to get paid is to work for it, right? That you got to work hard. But mine wasn't just work hard. It was like, I got to earn it. I got to work for it. And then as I started to do work in manifestation, I realized, oh my gosh, there's like money that comes all over the place and I never counted. So when I was building the meditation that's going to be in the Abundance Unleashed, and while I was writing that meditation, I got an email from this person. Last year, I was asked to be a keynote speaker at a conference, and they were going to pay me $1,500 for the speaking fee. And then the conference got canceled because of COVID. And then while I was writing this script, I was asked if I would still be willing to do this, that they were hoping to hire me. And so I have this work that just kind of came as I was doing this, writing this meditation. And then today, I was recording the meditation to put into the course. And as I was recording the meditation, I got $1,000, a refund that I wasn't expecting, came at that exact time. And I thought, okay, this is $2,500 that just came to me. And if I don't count that, what story does that say? If I don't count that money, what does that say, right? That is money that I was not expecting. And now here it is. And I'm grateful for that. So what would you prefer to believe? That, money comes from all different ways and that it's easy. That was just mine. That doesn't have to be yours. Okay, so I want to quickly lead into 5 key traits of an abundant entrepreneur, because I think they're just great things to have. One is thinking big versus thinking small. So think big, think huge, think, if you want to be a millionaire, think about being a billionaire. Make your goals bigger than you think. don't allow yourself to shrink, because there is nothing wrong with living in this grand scheme, right? The more we can raise that up, the higher we're going to rise. And so I believe that abundant entrepreneurs think big, they don't think small. They also think in plenty versus lack. I'm going to give you a quote in a minute, but you got to be able to see the abundance around you, not the lack of abundance around you. So see plenty versus lack. The third one is living in happiness versus resentment. Resentment just causes stress. It's not a fun place to be. So look for the happiness. Find the thing you can connect to. Will you always be positive 100% of the time? No, you will not. That's just not possible. We are emotional beings, and we're meant to ride some of our emotional waves. But a second, we can find moments to recognize, wow, this was a really good part. Or you know what, like it can be super simple. Sometimes I'll say things like, there wasn't wind today. There was no wind. I like that. I like that there was no wind. When I walked my dog, there was no wind. You know, what are the happy moments you can live in? Learning versus knowing it all. This one's huge. The second we feel like we know all the things, that is not a space of abundance. That is not a space of abundance. If we are in a space of learning and accepting, that is an abundant way of thinking. And then finally, what is working versus what is not working? We're really quick to be like, this isn't working, this isn't working, versus taking some time and some moments to be like, actually, these are the things that go really well. These are the things that actually work. And as we put our time and energy into thinking big, seeing plenty, feeling happiness, learning more, and recognizing what's working, we shift our entire energy into an abundant space, and more abundance shows up, which is my quote that I say to everybody. To receive abundance, you must first see abundance. This is something that I get every one of my clients to do. So I'm leaving it for you as well. I want you to make a list. You don't have to make this whole list right now, but make a list for where are all the areas that you're already abundant in your life, and make the longest possible list that you can, right? You can stretch all kinds of things. You know, you can think about, you know, the space that you have. You know, you can think about how many different things that you have, how many different friends that you have, what your family looks like. Think of all the ways that you are abundant, because the more you see abundance, and this is just a way of training your brain, the more you see abundance, the more you will receive abundance.
Tosh, does that
Okay,
include,
that's that.
does that include
Yeah.
how many pets you have, like how many dogs and cats you have?
Definitely. Do you have an abundance of pets? Absolutely.
Yes. I do not, but Jill has at least 11 last time I counted. So I'm just.
You are abundant in pet love.
I am. Judy just asked if toilet paper counts.
Yes. Yes. You know, there are some people who do not have an abundance of toilet paper, although more probably than, you know, people have had some different purchasing habits lately. But yeah, absolutely. It can be totally silly. And I do this with my clients because sometimes that's how it has to start, right? Like one time I actually said to someone, I'm like, well, how many blades of grass are in your backyard? Like, you are abundant. You have, like, you know, I'm making a huge assumption here, but everyone on this call is from Canada or the US, right? Like, we are two of the most abundant nations in the world just by even living here. So there's a good starting point for sure. We are abundant. Questions? Trying to see if I can find them.
Can I share a story? I don't know if we're allowed to talk or not. This is Sydney.
Yes. Please share a story.
You were talking about how money comes in from all different ways. And I was having this conversation with a friend, and her story was just so perfect for it. So she told herself years ago that she's like, I receive checks for no reason. Like, money comes to me, I receive checks for no reason. And she legitimately gets checks for no reason. She's like, I got a refund for like a car that I got rid of like 4 years ago, like just completely random reasons. And the money comes to her because when you are, like you're saying, when you're in that abundant mindset, you really do call in what you believe in. She manifested that, and that is now her reality. So that's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, you do. You call in abundant energy. And, you know, I mean, I am the converted for sure. There was probably a time in my life where I definitely was not my story. But I've just seen it so many times where it's like, no, I did an experiment in the fall with the Chillionaire Club where we had 100 days of giving. Um, and so every day we would give in some way. It could be a big way, it could be small, it could be anything from like you're going for a walk and you share a poop bag with, you know, someone who forgot theirs, to buying coffee in the line, to making a donation. But the goal was just every day you needed to give. And I can't even tell you, I made more money in that 10, like in those 100 days, than I have in a long time. Like it comes back. You got to believe it's going to come back. But it does. Like if you believe it will, it does. And it multiplies. Like it's crazy.
It's an energy from
Mhm.
like what I've read and what I've come to believe. It's an energy that you are, whatever you put out into this world comes back to you threefold, tenfold, whatever you believe. But
That's right.
yeah, it's definitely keep it going.
Yeah. And
Thank
that's
you
where
for
the
the awesome
chakra
teaching,
clearing
by the
can
way.
really be really beneficial, is because sometimes we have energy blocks within our body that we're not even aware of. And so using kind of source energy to clear them is a great way to clear blocks that you're not actually aware even exist. Mhm.
Tash,
Thank
I would
you.
just mention, we talked about like being woo-woo and not, and I tend to be more woo-woo, but it took me a while.
Yeah.
And I know some people on this call might not be woo-woo, and I would just say that this applies whether you think you will bring people in with your energy. I think if you are resentful or scared, that shows up in how you show up. So even if you're not thinking about this universal energy, it affects how you have joy in life, or how you greet people, or how you go for a job interview, or how you do a sale, right?
Yep.
So when you talk about it just as a real down-to-earth thing, you earlier said, you almost said this quote, I think, because I love it. I mean, paraphrasing it, Henry Ford, who I do not believe was woo-woo, my favorite quote is, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right.
Yep.
And that's paraphrasing. But the point is, when you have that block.
Yep.
Right.
100%. And I mean, you can take the energy elements completely out of this. This is brain science. This is how your brain actually works. And neuroscientific learning has, it has been significantly elevated in the last 25 years. The things that we know now that we didn't know literally 25 years ago is remarkable. Our brains actually make decisions before we are consciously aware of them making decisions. They're tiny computers that are up in our heads, and they learn by patterning. And so all of this stuff is, it's brain science. If you want to shift your reality, you have to repattern your brain. Full stop. And you can read nowadays, you can read all of the articles about that and to learn what that process looks like, for sure. I also love that Henry Ford quote, and I say it to my children all of the time, because kids love to say that they can't do things. And I'm not the mom to sit well with that statement. Are there any other questions or things that you want to share?
Sometimes I feel sorry for kids with successful moms in a weird way. We're great role models, right? Do you want to stop the share? Are we done? Do you want to stop the share so we can see each other?
Oh, I have one more slide. We can go to it and then we can have a conversation about that for sure. Well, I'll just share my last slide. So this is just really how you can connect with me. And I believe we're going to send out an email, or Jill's going to send out an email with some of my contact information. You can find me at Tash Reynolds on Instagram. My Facebook group is the Tash Reynolds. I use Instagram a little bit more. And then of course my website is tashreynolds.com. And then this is what I really wanted to plug, and we'll send you guys information about this as well. So next Friday, I have a masterclass coming out called Abundance Unleashed. And it will basically take a lot of the concepts we talked today about and a few other ones, and go into them a little bit deeper. And we're going to talk about actually clearing them. So I'm going to do a 20-minute clearing exercise over the webinar. And then in the actual program, I also have my money mantra download, and I have a morning meditation that I have done, a money meditation. So it's like an 8.5, 9-minute money meditation that you can do in the morning. And for folks who are in Hey Taxi, so the program is right now on sale for $111. And then for folks in Hey Taxi, we're giving you a 50% discount. So it'll be $55, which is a smoke and sweet deal. You'll have access to the recording, and of course the bonuses forever. They'll just be in there. You can come live or you can watch the replay after the fact if you're interested. And we'll send some more information in an email about that. Okay, now I can stop sharing my screen if I can find the button. Let's see here.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't get enough of Tash. She just fills me up, and every time we interact, I just get so much out of it. So
that's so nice.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. This is amazing. This is so fun. I love talking with women entrepreneurs. You're my favorite people.
Does anybody have any questions for Tash, or any ahas, any feedback, any breakthroughs they had already, anything that they want to share?
That's cool.
I would just say
we've run long, so go ahead, Sydney.
No, I would just say in my house, can't is not allowed either. Like, no, that's not a good word. Just don't. Yeah.
This is a random story about my daughter this morning. To your, like, what it's like to have a mom who's me. And I like to think my mom was this way too, although she wanted a different life for us, for sure. So she, I think, started a lot of this brain repatterning at a young age for me. But today I'm walking my daughter to school. My daughter is 6, and she gets in line, and I can tell she's sad because her head's down. And so I walk over to her, and I am like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And she said, her friend told her that she was bossy, and she had started to cry. And I was like, oh no.
She's a leader.
Yeah. I was like, honey, I was like, why did she say you're bossy? And she's like, well, because I told her she was walking too fast and I wanted to slow down. And I was like, you be a boss. If that's what you wanted, you said what you wanted, and that is okay. And if you don't want to play with her today because she makes you feel sad, you have so many friends in this class. Hang out with the ones you like. Find a different one. And she was just like sniffles. And I'm like, you be bossy if you want to be bossy. Like, no. And I always say to my husband, I'm like, we might regret this now, because there will be a time I remember what I was like at 13, and it was not a joy. Yeah. However, it will serve her well as soon as she's old enough to need it. And so you just kind of have to roll with those punches. If you gotta, I
have a 13-year-old too. So yes, I agree.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful.
So whenever she like talks back to me, I'm like, I have a moment where I'm like, you don't get to talk to us like that. I get it. I understand. However, yeah, it's raising little girls and little boys, because we have to teach them differently too, truthfully.
I have 3 of them, so I hear you. Well, thank you for this awesome class. I'm glad I popped in a little late.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, Sydney, this is right up your alley, girl. I'm glad you popped in too.
I know. I am very woo-woo, and I'm like, I read about Ho'oponopono probably, I don't even know how many years ago. Like, it's all awesome. I love seeing so many people waking up to this, and like it's becoming more mainstream. So it's beautiful. And I love that people are teaching it.
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely, I feel like it's not hard, I think, to bring people over. There's been kind of, I think, a smashing, like I said, of what's happening in our brains from a neuroscientific perspective and what's happening on an energetic plane. And it's, so many people are seeing results, right? Whether it's clearing through their chakras or, working with manifestation techniques and healing strategies. These are all things that we all need. And however you want to call them, I have to stop calling them woo because I have a program called A Touch of Woo, and I called it that because I feel like I need to prepare people where I'm like, it's just a little bit of woo, like it's not full blown, it's just a little bit. Because then they come in and they're like, okay, I can handle this, like I won't get the sage out quite yet. We'll wait till you're ready for that.
I have a friend who she used to call me Miss Universe, and I love it. I think she was one of those acquaintance friends, but I think she meant it more in like a derogatory way, like, oh, she's out there, like Sydney's out there. And I'm like, I will totally take it. You want to call me Miss Universe? I love it. And so I own it. And I'm like, you know what? I don't mind being out there, like, because like you're seeing, science is now showing, science, spirituality, like all of that, they're now lining up so that they support one another. And it's kind of like they say, spirituality is known things that science is just now able to prove, like, so it's awesome.
Very cool.
But I like the little touch of, that's cute.
It's all about managing expectations, right, Tosh?
Yeah. Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. One of my business partners is she's an accountant, like a former accountant, and then she teaches accounting at a college. And so I've been able to bring her right over. And we joke all the time that so this is another funny story about me and my business partners. We've actually never met in real life. So if you ever want to have a conversation about how to start a business with complete strangers from the internet, I've done that. And so we're all in different places, but we joke that, by the time we actually meet, because we can't see each other due to COVID, we're going to wind up with like a shaman and, somewhere and Brandy's just like, oh my God, that's really not what's going to happen. It's going to be on a beach. Who am I kidding? We run a business called the Chillionaire Club. It's going to be on a beach.
Totally on a beach.
Totally. Well, ladies, this has been so lovely, so lovely, and I look forward to doing a Clubhouse chat and hopefully seeing you guys in Hey Taxi, and that would be awesome.
So you're on Clubhouse?
I am on Clubhouse. I'm at Tash Reynolds, same. Okay, my name.
I'll find you. I know I debated. I got in early, so I debated: should I be just Sydney or should I be Sydney Lee? So I'll find you.
Yes, great, and then I'll add you once you add me.
Cool.
When I send out the email with all the information with our great deal on the abundance workshop and everything else, I will put in all of her information where to find Tosh on social.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you, Tosh.
Thank you. Good night.
It was really awesome.
Have a great night.
It was really awesome.
Thank you.
How many of you were on this call and going, oh, I wish I would have told so-and-so. Oh my God, I wish I would have invited so-and-so. I wish my daughter could have heard this call. But we are going to archive the call. It will be in the Drive Tribe only. Membership has its privileges, ladies. And this is one of them. Calls like this are one of them. And so this will be archived. It'll be in the Drive Tribe, and Jill will let you know when it's available.
Awesome.
So that's her.
This was great. Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.